The rain hammered against the old Portland bridge as I clutched my little girl to my chest, trying to keep her warm under a soaked blanket. 3 years had passed since my husband left me for my best friend, then told the world I was dead. That night, headlights cut through the darkness. A black limousine slowed, its door opening with a groan that echoed in the storm. My breath caught in my throat. Standing in the rain was the man who built an empire, the man who believed I'd been buried long ago. Maftaluna, his eyes widened, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Rebecca, you were supposed to be gone, and that, my dear friends, was the night the truth refused to stay buried. Asterisk, if you've ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or made to feel invisible, or maybe you've experienced the deepest loneliness, or that unbearable pain of losing those you love most, share it. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because maybe the next story will remind you of your own strength." For a moment, standing under that bridge, I felt the years crash over me like waves. To understand how I ended up there, you need to know the life I once lived, the life I thought would last forever. I married Charles Miller when I was only 27. Back then, his smile could light up a room, and he made me believe we were unstoppable. We built a house in Seattle, a 2-story home with a white porch swing. On the outside, it looked like a dream. But inside those walls, silence began to grow like mold. Year after year, I carried the weight of disappointment. Each month was the same routine: doctors, prayers, fasting, hope that crumbled into tears on my pillow. I couldn't give him children, and with every year that passed, Charles grew colder. At first, he would hold my hand and say softly, "It's okay, Rebecca, maybe next year." Those words were warm in the beginning, but slowly, they disappeared. Instead, I was met with sharp glances, with nights he didn't come home, the smell of perfume on his shirts that wasn't mine, the whisper of younger women who could give him what I couldn't. And through it all, I told myself marriage meant endurance. For better or worse, I whispered in the dark, convincing myself love could survive anything, but endurance has a cost. By the time I turned 52, the woman in the mirror was almost unrecognizable. Gray streaked through my hair, my smile had faded into something hollow, and my heart felt like a house abandoned by its owner. The cruelest part, I still loved him. Or maybe I loved the memory of the man he once was. Each time he walked through the door, a tiny flame of hope flickered. Maybe tonight he would see me again, not as a failure, but as his wife. One autumn evening, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The clock ticked loudly, the house echoing with emptiness. Charles finally walked in, his face expressionless, his briefcase heavy in his hand. For one fleeting second, I thought he was going to sit across from me, pour 2 glasses of wine, and talk about us like we used to, decades ago. But when he set that briefcase down and opened it, the sound wasn't of reconciliation, it was the shuffle of papers. Divorce papers. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might drown out his words. 25 years, Rebecca, 25 years, and nothing to show. I won't waste any more of my life with you. Nothing to show. My years, my tears, my loyalty reduced to nothing. I wanted to scream, to fight, to remind him of every sacrifice, every prayer, every sleepless night, but the words died in my throat. All I could do was stare as he pushed the papers across the table like a death sentence. And as I picked them up with trembling hands, one thought pierced through the fog of my pain. This is how my life ends, silently, in the shadow of a man who once swore to love me. But little did I know, the cruelest betrayal was still to come. After that night, after the papers slid across the table like knives, I stopped waiting for Charles to come home. Hope had become too heavy to carry. Instead, I poured my heart into the only place that still responded to me: my garden. In the backyard of our Seattle house, along the old wooden fence, I had planted climbing roses years earlier. At first, they were just fragile stems, struggling against the wind, but season after season, I nursed them back to life. While my husband drifted further from me, those roses grew taller, their blooms richer, as if they could hear the secrets I whispered when no one else would listen. Every morning, I would step outside in my worn slippers, kneel in the damp soil, and speak to them softly. "Good morning, my little ones. You're the only children I'll ever have." My neighbors might have thought I was crazy, talking to flowers, but to me, those petals were tiny arms reaching out to hold me when no one else did. Sometimes I would sing lullabies to them, songs I once imagined singing to a baby of my own. When their buds opened under the summer sun, I imagined their faces, smiling back at me. I fed them, watered them, protected them from frost. In a way, they became my family. But the truth was cruel. Flowers can't hug you back. They don't wipe away your tears when the nights are too long, or when the silence inside your home feels like a tomb. Still, they were all I had. One evening in late autumn, I remember kneeling there as the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the fading leaves. My hands were dirty, my knees numb from the cold ground, but my roses stood proud scarlet blooms defying the coming winter. For a moment, I let myself imagine that maybe, just maybe, miracles could still bloom in barren soil. I closed my eyes, breathing in the sharp scent of the roses, and prayed, God, if you won't give me a child, then at least let me keep the strength to stand. But when I walked back inside, wiping the dirt from my hands, the house was dark. Only one lamp glowed faintly in the corner, and there, in the living room, Charles was waiting. His coat hung on the chair, his briefcase on the coffee table. For a fleeting heartbeat, hope sparked again. Maybe he was finally ready to talk. Maybe he would apologize for the years of silence. Maybe the man I loved was still in there, buried beneath the cold exterior. But as he looked up, his eyes were like stone, and the papers he slid toward me made my breath stop. Divorce papers. And with that, the roses became the only living proof that love could survive in a place where I could not. A week after that evening in the garden, Charles called me. His voice was clipped, businesslike. Meet me tomorrow, 10 o'clock. The Harbor Cafe. The Harbor Cafe was a polished glass and steel place in downtown San Francisco, filled with executives in sharp suits and women with perfect hair. I had been there once, years ago, when Charles still cared enough to take me out. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing down my navy dress, the one I kept for special occasions. I told myself this was it. Maybe he had reconsidered. Maybe he had realized the cruelty of what he had done at home. My heart wanted to believe he was going to tell me, in public, that he still loved me. When I arrived, the smell of roasted coffee and warm pastries filled the air, but it couldn't calm the storm inside me. I spotted him immediately sitting by the window, sunlight slanting across his sharp jawline, his tie perfectly knotted, but there was no warmth in his eyes, only finality. I slid into the chair across from him, my palms sweating. Charlie, I whispered, why here? He didn't answer. Instead, he placed a leather folder on the table and opened it with deliberate slowness. The shuffle of papers cut through the cafe's chatter like a blade. I want this done quickly, he said, his voice low but firm. Sign them here, here, and here. I stared at the pages, my hands trembling. Charlie, 25 years, after everything, why humiliate me like this? In front of strangers. His eyes narrowed. Because hiding has never changed who you are. Look at yourself, Rebecca. 25 years, and nothing to show. Vanessa offers me a future. You offer me nothing. The words hit harder than any slap. My throat closed. Around us, cups clinked, keyboards clicked, waiters bustled by. No one looked our way. To them, we were just another couple sorting out business. But to me, it was the execution of my marriage done neatly, over lattes and croissants. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to beg him to remember the nights I prayed for a miracle, the mornings I tended the roses as if they were our children. Instead, my voice cracked into a whisper. Was I really nothing to you? He leaned back, expression carved in stone. You were a burden. I am done carrying you. Tears blurred my vision. I reached for the coffee cup just to keep my hands from shaking. My reflection in the dark liquid looked like a stranger, broken, hollow, erased. I pushed the papers back, toward him. If this is what you want, Charlie, then you have killed more than a marriage today. You've killed the woman who believed in you. His lips curled faintly, a cruel shadow of a smile. He closed the folder, stood, and walked out, leaving me in a room full of strangers, with silence louder than thunder. But fate was not finished with me yet. What came next would shatter me in ways I never imagined. I left the cafe with the divorce papers still burning in my hands. The city was alive with noise horns blaring, people rushing past with shopping bags and coffee cups, but inside me, everything had gone silent. That night, I collapsed on the couch, my body trembling with exhaustion. I hadn't eaten all day. The smell of coffee still clung to my hair, a bitter reminder of the humiliation I had swallowed in public. For hours, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if life had already ended for me, even though my heart still beat. The next morning, the dizziness came. My hands shook as I tried to pour tea, and the cup shattered against the floor. Neighbors must have heard the crash, because Mrs. Adler from next door knocked and insisted on driving me to the hospital. I remember the sterile white light of the ER, the sharp smell of disinfectant. The nurse clipped a monitor to my finger, her face soft with pity, as if she already knew something I didn't. After blood work and an ultrasound, the doctor entered, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Miller," he began, adjusting his glasses. "You're 6 weeks pregnant." The words didn't make sense at first. Pregnant? At 52, I laughed a hollow, broken laugh until tears spilled down my face. "That's impossible," I whispered. "For 25 years, nothing." But the doctor only nodded gently. "Sometimes life surprises us. Your body, well, it seems it's not finished yet." I pressed my hands to my stomach, trembling. Inside me, after decades of emptiness, there was life. A heartbeat I couldn't hear yet, but one that was real. My tears blurred everything, the doctor, the machines, the walls, until all I saw was light breaking through the cracks of my despair. "A miracle," I whispered to myself. "After everything, God has given me a miracle." But with the joy came fear. How would I raise a child alone? I had no money, no husband, no family. My parents were gone, my siblings estranged. The man who should have been celebrating this gift had already buried me in his heart and chosen another woman. Still, when I left the hospital with the report clutched in my hand, I walked taller than I had in years. I wore my best dress, the one I hadn't dared to touch in months, and told myself, if Charles sees this, if he sees the proof, maybe he'll take me back. Maybe this child will change everything. My heart pounded with fragile hope as I approached our old house, the hospital, papers tucked carefully in my purse like sacred treasure. The driveway was full of cars, laughter spilling out into the street. White ribbons hung on the gates, flowers lined the walkway, and music drifted on the wind. I stopped cold. My hands shook as I asked a neighbor what was happening. Her words sliced through me like glass. "Didn't you hear? Charlie just got married today to Vanessa." And in that moment, the miracle in my womb clashed with the betrayal that would haunt me forever. Asterisk, asterisk. The street outside our old home was unrecognizable. White ribbons fluttered from the gates, candles flickered in glass lanterns, and cars lined both sides of the driveway. Music spilled into the night, violins, laughter, champagne glasses clinking. I froze at the edge of the sidewalk, clutching the hospital report against my chest. My pulse hammered so loudly it drowned out the orchestra. I caught sight of a neighbor stepping out of her car, her sequined dress catching the light. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked at me strangely, almost pitying. "Didn't you hear? Charlie just got married today to Vanessa." My knees nearly buckled. Vanessa, my best friend, the woman who used to hold my hand when Charlie insulted me, who whispered, "Be patient, Rebecca, he'll change." Now she stood inside, wearing the dress I once dreamed of, smiling in the life I had built and lost. I stumbled forward, my feet heavy as if chained. Through the iron gates, I could see the garden glowing under strings of golden lights. Guests swirled across the lawn, their laughter loud enough to stab my ears. And then I saw them: Charlie in his sharp black suit, Vanessa in white satin. Her arm looped through his like a prize he had finally claimed. They raised glasses together, basking in applause, while the world celebrated the ashes of my existence. I pressed a hand against my stomach. Inside me, life stirred, a fragile miracle. But outside, I was already erased. The hospital papers slipped from my purse, scattering across the ground. Ultrasound photos fluttered in the wind, trampled by passing guests who didn't even glance down. To them, I was invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of a party. My throat burned with the scream I couldn't release. "Charlie," I wanted to shout. "I'm still here. I'm carrying your child." But no sound came, only a sob that tore through my chest and died in the night air. Vanessa's laughter rang across the lawn, light and crystalline, the same laugh I once thought of as my sister's. My vision blurred with tears. My heart screamed questions I would never have the courage to ask. How long had they been planning this? How many cups of tea at my kitchen table had been poisoned with lies? I bent down, gathering the scattered papers with trembling fingers. Each page was wet with dew, stained with dirt, smudged with the weight of betrayal. I clutched them close, pressing them to my chest as though they could shield me from the cruelty of the scene before me. And then I turned away. The music swelled behind me, mocking me with every note. The life I had prayed for was now draped in white satin and gold light sand. I was the ghost left wandering the street. But what I didn't know then was that this night was only the beginning of the darkness waiting for me. The night Emily came into the world. The sky itself seemed to rage with me. I had been wandering the streets for hours, clutching my swollen belly, the hospital papers still folded in my bag like a secret I could no longer bear. The rain came first, soft and steady, but soon it turned into a furious storm. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning split the sky, and I stumbled beneath the Broadway Bridge in Portland, searching for shelter. My body was trembling, not just from the cold, but from the pain tearing through me. Contractions gripped me like a vice, each wave stronger than the last. I collapsed against the damp concrete wall, my hands pressed to my stomach. Not now, please, not here. I begged the night, but nature was merciless. The underpass echoed with the roar of cars rushing above, the ground vibrating beneath my back. Water pooled around me, soaking through my thin coat. My hair stuck to my face as I bit down on my lip to keep from screaming. Tasting blood mixed with rain, I was utterly alone. No husband to hold my hand, no best friend to whisper encouragement, no doctor, no nurse, no sterile room, just me, the storm, and the tiny life fighting to be born. Hours stretched like years. My nails clawed at the concrete as another contraction ripped through me. I thought I might die there, nameless, forgotten exactly as Charlie wanted. But then, a sound broke through the storm. A cry. Thin, fragile, but fierce. I gasped, tears streaming down my face as I gathered the small, slippery bundle into my arms. My daughter, my miracle. Daughter's skin was warm against my chest despite the cold night. Her cry echoed beneath the bridge, cutting through the thunder like a defiant trumpet. My body shook with exhaustion, but my heart surged with something I hadn't felt in years: pure, unshakable love. I pressed my lips to her damp forehead. Emily, I whispered through tears. Your name is Emily, because even though the world turned its back on me, God still heard my prayers, and you are the answer. The storm raged on around us, but in that moment, everything else fell silent. All I could hear was her breathing, tiny and determined. I wrapped her in my coat, rocking her gently, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. I'll protect you. I'll keep you safe. You are my reason now. For the first time in decades, I felt alive. Broken, yes, but alive because Emily's heartbeat gave mine purpose. Yet, as I held her close, staring out into the rain, I knew the hardest part was only beginning. Surviving as a mother, with nothing but a newborn, and a world that believed I was dead, would test me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The 2 years that followed Emily's birth were both the most beautiful and the most brutal of my life. By day, I was a mother, her mother. I would cradle her in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine, her smile lighting up even the darkest corners of the bridge we called home. By night, I was a ghost, drifting through a city that no longer saw me, surviving on scraps, whispers, and mercy. I begged outside grocery stores, my daughter swaddled against my chest. Sometimes, kind strangers would slip coins into my hand, their eyes soft with pity. Other times, they spat at me, muttering, "Get a job," as if jobs waited for women who were supposed to be buried, because that was the cruelest lie of all. Charlie hadn't just left me, he had buried me. I learned from a neighbor's daughter that he had staged a full funeral at the mansion. There were flowers, mourners, even tears. People wept for me while I was still alive, while I was washing strangers' clothes for a few dollars or picking scraps from trash bins to keep Emily fed. "Mr. Miller said you died," the girl whispered once as she handed me a loaf of bread, her eyes darting around as if afraid to be seen helping me. "He cried in front of everyone. Vanessa was there, holding his hand." I laughed then, a bitter, hollow laugh that scared even myself. A funeral for me, while I was still breathing. My husband had erased me so completely that even his powerful father believed the lie. At night, under the bridge, I would hold Emily close as cars roared overhead, their lights flashing like distant stars. Her little body would shiver, and I'd whisper into her hair, "Stay with me, baby. Please, stay with me." I wrapped her in the thinnest blankets, sang lullabies into the darkness, and prayed for morning. The winters were the hardest, frostbite at our skin, and more than once, I thought I might not wake up. But every time Emily's tiny hands searched for mine in the night, I forced myself to keep breathing. Still, the bitterness gnawed at me. Vanessa wore the jewels Charlie once promised me. She stood in the mansion where I had once lived, entertaining guests in the garden where I had planted roses, and worst of all, she called herself Mrs. Miller. My name, my place, stolen as easily as my life. There were nights when rage nearly consumed me, but then Emily would smile, her toothless grin brighter than any chandelier, and my anger softened into determination. She was my anchor, my miracle, the proof that I still mattered. 2 years passed this way, half alive, half erased, and then, on a stormy night much like the one when Emily was born, headlights cut through the rain at the edge of the bridge. A sleek black car slowed to a stop, and when the door opened, I came face to face with the last person I ever expected to see, the man who believed I was in the grave. Asterisk, asterisk, the rain came down in heavy sheets, drumming against the concrete, soaking through the thin blanket that barely covered Emily. I rocked her in my arms, whispering, "Mama's here, sweetheart, just hold on." Her cough rattled through the storm, weak and fragile, and my chest ached with helplessness. Then, suddenly, the underpass filled with a blinding light. Headlights, a sleek black car pulled to a slow stop just a few feet away. No one ever stopped here. My heart lurched. Fear and hope collided inside me as the engine went silent. The rear door opened with a groan, and a tall man stepped out. Even in the downpour, his presence was commanding. His silver hair clung to his forehead, his long coat already drenched. For a moment, he didn't move, he just stared, and then his face crumbled. "Rebecca," his voice broke, the syllables trembling as if saying my name might shatter him. "You were supposed to be dead." My lips parted, but no words came. Tears blurred my vision. I clutched Emily tighter, shielding her from the rain, from his gaze, from the weight of a truth too heavy to carry. He staggered forward, his polished shoes sinking into the mud. His eyes, once sharp with authority, now glistened with disbelief. When they fell on Emily, his whole body shook, and this child, his hand trembled as he pointed, his voice barely more than a whisper. "She's my granddaughter, isn't she?" I nodded, unable to force sound through the sobs that tore from my throat. My knees buckled, and I sank into the wet earth, clutching Emily as if the world might steal her from me. Richard dropped to his knees beside me. The mud stained his coat, rainwater streamed down his face, but he didn't care. His hands cupped my cheeks, trembling, searching, as if to confirm I was real. "My son lied to me," he choked. "He told me you were gone. He buried you with his lies, while you suffered here like this." Emily stirred, her cough echoing in the underpass. Richard's gaze softened, his jaw tightening with a grief I had never seen in the man who once towered over boardrooms and empires. Slowly, he reached out, his hand hovering before gently brushing the wet curls from her forehead. "My God," he whispered, "she's his. She's blood, my blood." The storm roared around us, but in that moment, time seemed to stop. For years, I had been erased, invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of other people's lives. And now, with one look, Richard had pulled me back into the world of the living. He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around my shoulders, his voice firm despite the tremor in it. "You're coming with me, both of you, tonight." I shook my head weakly. "I have nothing, no clothes, no papers, no place." His voice thundered under the bridge, cutting through the storm. "You belong to my family, and no one, not even my son, can erase that." I thought I had already lived my story of survival, but what awaited me beyond that car door was a new chapter I never dared to imagine. The drive that night felt unreal. For 2 years I had ridden buses I couldn't afford, walked alleys that smelled of rot, slept beneath bridges. Now, I sat in the back of a black limousine, leather seats soft beneath me, warmth seeping into my frozen bones. Emily's little hand clutched mine as she dozed against my chest, her cough finally softening into sleep. Streetlights blurred through the rain-streaked windows, glowing like halos in the storm. I kept waiting to wake up on the cold concrete again, to discover this was only another cruel dream. But when the car turned through iron gates and rolled up a long gravel driveway, my breath caught. The house rose before us like something from another Lake house on the shore of Lake Tahoe, its windows glowing golden in the darkness. Pine trees framed the water, their scent sharp and clean, and the lake shimmered like a sheet of black glass beneath the storm clouds. Inside, warmth enveloped us instantly. The scent of polished wood and fresh lilies filled the air. A maid gasped when she saw me, nearly dropping the tray in her hands. Richard's voice thundered through the hall. Blankets, food, medicine for the child, now. Within minutes, Emily was tucked into a bed softer than anything I had ever touched. Doctors were called, their hands gentle as they checked her tiny chest, listened to her lungs, prescribed medicine I could never have afforded. I sat beside her, stroking her hair, half afraid someone would tell me to leave, but no one did. That night, Richard himself brought me a tray of food. His strong hands, once feared in boardrooms, now trembled as he set the plate in front of me. "Eat," he said softly. "You've suffered enough." Tears slipped down my cheeks as I lifted the spoon. For 2 years, I had begged for scraps, eaten from paper bags under flickering street lamps. Now I was being served like I mattered. Every bite tasted like a memory of dignity I thought I had lost forever. Later, Richard sat across from me, his eyes fixed on Emily as she slept. His voice was low, raw. "I wronged you too, Rebecca. I should never have believed him. I should have searched harder. Forgive me." I shook my head, my voice trembling. "You trusted your son. How could you know?" But inside, gratitude swelled because no one had ever admitted fault to me before. The next morning, he led me into his study, lined with books and family portraits. My picture was nowhere, as though I had truly been erased. Richard's jaw tightened. "I cannot undo what was done, but I can make this right for you and Emily. This lake house is yours. From now on, you will not live in shame." I pressed my hand to my mouth, overwhelmed. "Why? Why would you do this for me?" His eyes burned with conviction. "Because you are my family. And because that child is my heir." I thought peace had finally returned, but Richard wasn't finished. He was planning something greater, something that would shake the very foundations of our lives. The grand hall of the Seattle mansion glittered that evening. Chandeliers sparkled like frozen stars, casting golden light across rows of crystal glasses and silver cutlery. Guests mingled in expensive gowns and tailored suits, their laughter rising like a chorus. To them, this was just another elegant dinner hosted by Richard Miller, the man whose wealth commanded respect. But for me, it was a battlefield. I entered quietly, Emily's small hand wrapped tightly around mine. Heads turned, conversations faltered. A fork clattered against a plate. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. "Isn't that Rebecca?" someone gasped. "But she's supposed to be dead." My cheeks burned, but I lifted my chin. Emily pressed into my side, her wide eyes darting nervously across the sea of strangers. And then I saw them. Charlie, in his tailored black suit, his arm draped around Vanessa as though she were a prize. Vanessa's smile froze the instant her eyes met mine, her face drained of color, her champagne glass slipping slightly in her hand. Charlie, on the other hand, went rigid, his jaw tightened, fists clenched, his eyes darting from me to his father. The room fell into silence as Richard stepped to the center. He tapped his glass lightly, the sharp sound echoing like a gavel. His presence commanded every eye in the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice deep, steady, "thank you for joining me tonight. This dinner is not only for business, it is for family. And tonight, you will hear the truth about mine." A murmur swept through the guests. My pulse thudded in my throat. Emily clung to my dress, peeking shyly at the crowd. Richard's gaze swept over the room, hardening as it landed on Charlie and Vanessa. 2 years ago, many of you attended a funeral. You wept with us. You believed my daughter-in-law Rebecca Miller had passed away. Gasps erupted. Faces turned to me, to the living ghost standing in their midst. Richard's voice sharpened. That funeral was built on a lie. Rebecca did not die. She was cast aside, betrayed, abandoned while my son and this woman paraded in luxury on the grave they dug for her. Vanessa let out a broken sob, covering her face. Charlie's lips curled into a snarl, but Richard silenced him with a roar that shook the chandeliers. And while they lived their lie, Rebecca carried my son's child. She raised Emily in poverty, in shame, while I mourned a woman who was very much alive. Gasps turned into outrage, whispers into shock. Richard bent down, beckoning to Emily. My daughter's tiny feet carried her forward, her curls bouncing as she toddled toward him. Richard lifted her high into the air, his voice breaking with pride. "This is Emily Miller, my granddaughter. my heir, the true blood of this family. The hall erupted. Some clapped awkwardly, others gasped, a few covered their mouths in disbelief. Charlie surged forward, his face red. "Father, this is madness." "Silence," Richard thundered. "You dishonored this family. You lied to the world. And you buried your wife alive to take her best friend to your bed. You disgust me." For once, Charlie had no words. His fists unclenched, his eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape that wasn't there. I stood frozen, tears streaming, as the truth finally echoed through the walls of the mansion. But justice spoken aloud is only the beginning. What came after this night would test all of us even more. The night of the dinner party felt like a storm breaking. The lies that had smothered me for years were finally dragged into the light. And for the first time, I was no longer invisible. But justice has a way of leaving ashes behind. The next morning, Richard moved Emily and me into the estate. The staff, who once whispered cruel things, now bowed respectfully. Some even brought fresh flowers for my room. Emily toddled through marble hallways as if she had been born to them, her laughter echoing against the walls that once silenced me. Charlie, however, could not accept his defeat. 2 days later, he stormed into my quarters, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild. Vanessa trailed behind him, her mascara streaked from sleepless nights. "Evelyn," his voice was venom, spitting my name like poison. "What have you done? Do you think parading that child makes him mine? Makes him worthy?" Emily looked up from the rug where she was playing with toy cars. Her innocent face lit up. "Daddy," she whispered softly. For a flicker of a second, something cracked in Charlie's eyes. But then, he sneered. "Don't call me that." My heart shattered. My daughter, too young to understand rejection, lowered her head and turned back to her toys. I rose, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. "Get out, Charlie. You've done enough." Before he could strike, Richard entered, his cane striking the marble floor like thunder. "If you touch her, Henry, I will disown you before the sun sets." His voice shook with fury. "From this day forward, every stone, every dollar, every title belongs to Rebecca and Emily. You are no longer my son. You are dead to me." And so they left, Charlie and Vanessa, heads bowed, their empire of lies collapsing behind them. You'd think I felt triumphant. But as I held Emily close, all I felt was sorrow. For years, I had begged for Charlie's love. Now, all that was left between us was ruin. Yet even in sorrow, there was hope. As months turned to years, Emily grew strong and bright. She carried the Miller name with grace, becoming the kind of person her father never was. Compassionate, wise, unbreakable. Each time I saw her laugh, each time she placed flowers from the garden in my hands, I knew my suffering had not been in vain. Charlie and Vanessa faded into whispers of scandal and debt, but I never sought them again. Some ghosts are better left in the past. And me. I learned something I want you to carry with you tonight. Justice doesn't erase pain. It doesn't give back the years stolen. But it gives you strength to stand tall again. My dear ones, if betrayal has ever broken you, remember, this truth always finds its way through the cracks. And when it does, you must be ready to stand in it. Not as the broken soul they tried to bury, but as the survivor you've become. And for me, that light was Emily, my daughter, my miracle, my redemption.